Boom. Yo, what's good? We're back. 12 Rules for Life, Jordan Peterson. This episode is being rushed out for my boy Bruno. If I make mistakes, if I seem a bit off, I am feeling a bit sick, so please forgive me. Chaos and order. Personality, female and male. Chaos and order are two of the most fundamental elements of lived experience, two of the most basic subdivisions of being itself. But they're not things or objects, and they're not experienced as such. Things or objects are part of the objective world. They're inanimate, spiritless, they're dead. This is not true of chaos and order. Those are perceived, experienced, and understood to the degree that they are understood at all, as personalities. And that is just as true of the perceptions, experiences, and understandings of modern peoples as their ancient forebears. It's just that modernists don't notice. Order and chaos are not understood first, objectively, as things or objects, and then personified. That would only be the case if we perceived objective reality first, and then inferred intent and purpose. But that isn't how perception operates, despite our preconceptions. Perception of things as tools, for example, occurs before or in concert with perceptions of things as objects. What we see what things mean just as fast or faster than we see what they are. Perception of things as entities with personality also occurs before perception of things as things. This is particularly true of the action of others, living others, but we also see the non-living objective world as animated, with purpose and intent. This is because of the operation of what psychologists have called the hyperactive agency detector within us. We evolved over millennia with intensely social circumstances. This means that the most significant elements of our environment of origin were personalities, not things, objects, or situations. The personalities we have evolved to perceive have been around in predictable form and in typical hierarchical configurations, forever, for all intents and purposes. They have been male or female, for example, for 1 billion years. That's a long time. The division of life within its two sexes occurred before the evolution of the multicellular animals. It was in a still respectable 1/5 of that time that mammals who take extensive care of their young emerged. Thus the category of parent and or child has been around for 200 million years. That's longer than birds have existed. That's longer than flowers have grown. It's not 1 billion years, but it's still a very long time. It's plenty long enough for male and female, and parent and child, to serve as vital and fundamental parts of the environment to which we have adapted. This means that male and female, and parent and child are categories for us, natural categories, deeply embedded in our perceptual, emotional, and motivational structures. Our brains are deeply social. Other creatures, particularly other humans, were crucially important to us as we lived, mated, and evolved. Those creatures were literally our natural habitat, our environment. From a Darwinian perspective, nature, reality itself, the environment itself, is what selects. The environment cannot be defined in any more fundamental manner. It is not mere inert matter. Reality itself is whatever we contend with when we are striving to survive and reproduce. A lot of that is other beings, their opinion of us, and their communities, and that's that. Over the millennia, our brain capacity increased and we developed curiosity to spare. We became increasingly aware and curious about the nature of the world. What we eventually conceptualized as the objective world, outside the personalities of family and troop. The outside is not merely unexplored physical territory. Outside is outside of what we currently understand, and understanding is dealing with and coping with, and not merely representing objectively. But our brains had been long concentrating on other people. Thus it appears that we first began to perceive the unknown, chaotic, non-human world with the innate categories of our social brain. And even this is a misstatement. When we first began to perceive the unknown, chaotic, non-animal world, we used categories that had originally evolved to represent the pre-human animal social world. Our minds are far older than mere humanity. Our categories are far older than our species. Our most basic category, as old, in some sense, as the sexual act itself, appears to be that of sex, male and female. We appear to have taken the primordial knowledge of structured, creative opposition and begun to interpret everything through its lens. Order, the known, appears symbolically associated with the masculinity, as illustrated in the aforementioned yang of the Taoist yin-yang symbol. This is perhaps because the primary hierarchical structure of human society is masculine, as it is among most animals, including the chimpanzees, who are our closest genetic and arguably behavioral match. It is because men are, and throughout history have been, the builders of towns and cities, the engineers, the stonemasons, the bricklayers, the lumberjacks, the operators of heavy machinery. Order is God the Father, the eternal judge, ledger keeper, and dispenser of rewards and punishments. Order is the peacetime army of policemen and soldiers. It's the political structure, the corporate environment, and the system. It's the they in you know what they say. It's credit cards, classrooms, supermarket checkout lineups, turn taking, traffic lights, and the familiar routines of daily commuters. Order, when pushed too far, when imbalanced, can also man itself destructively and terribly. It does so as the forced migration, the concentration camp, and the soul-devouring uniformity of the goose step. Chaos, the unknown, is symbolically associated with the feminine. This is partly because all the things we have come to know were born, originally, out of the unknown, just as all beings we encounter were born of mothers. Chaos is matter, origin, source, mother, materia, the substance from which all things are made. It is also what matters, or what is the matter, the very subject matter of thought and communication. In its positive guise, chaos is possibility itself, the source of ideas, the mysterious realm of gestation and birth. As a negative force, it's the impenetrable darkness of a cave and the accident by the side of the road. It's the mother grizzly, all compassion to her cubs, who marks you as a potential predator and tears you to pieces. Chaos, the eternal feminine, is also the crushing force of sexual selection. Women are choosy maters, unlike female chimps, their closest animal counterparts. Men do not meet female human standards. It is for this reason that women on dating sites rate 85% of men as below average in attractiveness. It is for this reason that we all have twice as many female ancestors as males. Imagine that all the women who have ever lived averaged one child. Now imagine that half the men who have ever lived have fathered 2 children, if they had any, while the other half fathered none. It is women as nature who looks at half of all men and says no. For the men, that's a direct encounter with chaos, and it occurs with devastating force every time they are turned down for a date. Human female choosiness is also why we are very different from the common ancestor we share with our chimpanzee cousins, while the latter are very much the same. Women's proclivity to say no more than any other force has shaped our evolution into the creative, industrious, upright, large-brained, competitive, aggressive, domineering creatures we are today. It is nature as woman who says, "Well, bucko, you're good enough for a friend, but my experience of you so far has not indicated the suitability of your genetic material for continued propagation." The most profound religious symbols rely on their power in large part on this underlying fundamentally bipartisan conceptual subdivision. The Star of David, for example, is the the Star of David is, for example, the downward pointing triangle of femininity and the upward pointing triangle of the male. It's the same for Yoni and Lingam of Hinduism, which come covered with snakes, our ancient adversaries and provocateurs. The Shiva Linga is depicted with snake deities called Nagas. The ancient Egyptians represented Osiris, god of the state, and Isis, god of the underworld, as twin cobras with their tails knotted together. The same symbol was used in China to portray Fuxi and Nua, creators of humanity and of writing. The representations in Christianity are less abstract, more like personalities, but the familiar Western images of the Virgin Mary and the Christ child are the Pietà, both express female-male dual unity, as does traditional insistence on the androgyny of Christ. It should also be noted finally that the structure of the brain itself at a gross morphological level appears to reflect this duality. This, to me, indicates the fundamental, beyond the metaphorical reality of this symbolically female. Sorry. Now I've lost my spot because I looked up. This, to me, indicates the fundamental, beyond the metaphorical reality of the symbolically feminine-masculine divide, since the brain is adapted by definition to reality itself. That is, reality conceptualized in this quasi-Darwinian manner. Elkanon Goldberg, student of the great Russian neuropsychologist Alexander Luria, has proposed quite lucidly and directly that the very hemispheric study of the cortex reflects the fundamental division between novelty, the unknown or chaos, and routinization, the known order. He doesn't make reference to the symbols representing the structure of the world in reference to this theory, but that's all the better. An idea is more credible when it emerges as a consequence of investigations in different realms. We already know all this, but we don't know we know it. But we immediately comprehend it when it's articulated in a manner such as this. Everyone understands order and chaos, world and underworld, and when it's explained using these terms. We all have a palpable sense of the chaos lurking under everything familiar. That's why we understand the strange, surreal stories of Pinocchio, Sleeping Beauty, and the Lion King, and the Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, with their eternal landscapes of known and unknown world and underworld. We've all been in both places many times, sometimes by happenstance, sometimes by choice. I'm going to hit the pause button there very quickly. Excuse me. And we're back. Sorry about that. Many things begin to fall in place when you begin to consciously understand the world in this manner. It's as if the knowledge of your body and soul falls into alignment with the knowledge of your intellect. And there's more. Such knowledge is proscriptive as well as descriptive. This is the kind of knowing what helps. Third time on that sentence. This is the kind of knowing what helps you know how. This is the kind of knowing what that helps you know how. Fifth time's the charm. This is the kind of is from which you can derive an ought. The Taoist juxtaposition of yin and yang, for example, doesn't simply portray chaos and order as the fundamental elements of being. It also tells you how to act. The way, the Taoist path of life, is represented by or exists on the border between the twin serpents. The way is the path of proper being. It's the same way that referred to by Christ in John 14:6. I am the way, the truth, and the life. The same idea is expressed in Matthew 7:14. Because strait is the gate and narrow is the way, which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. We eternally inhabit order surrounded by chaos. We eternally occupy known territory surrounded by the unknown. We experience meaningful engagement when we meditate appropriately between them. We are adapted in the deepest Darwinian sense, not to the world of objects, but to the meta-realities of order and chaos, yin, yang, and yin. Chaos and order make up the eternal, transcendent environment of the living. To straddle that fundamental duality is to be balanced, to have one foot firmly planted in order and security, and the other in chaos, possibility, growth, and adventure. When life suddenly reveals itself as intense, gripping, and meaningful, when time passes and you're so engrossed in what you're doing, you don't notice it is there, and then you are located precisely on the border between order and chaos. The subjective meaning that we encounter there is a reaction of our deepest being, our neurologically and evolutionarily grounded instinctive self, indicating that we are ensuring the stability but also the expansion of habitable, productive territory of space that is personal, social, and natural. It's the right place to be in every sense. You are there when and where it matters. That's what music is telling you too when you're listening, even more perhaps when you're dancing, when its harmonious, layered patterns of predictability and unpredictability make meaning itself well up from the most profound depths of your being. Chaos and order are fundamental elements because every lived situation, even every conceivable lived situation, is made up of both. No matter where we are, there are some things we can identify, make use of, and predict, and some things we neither know nor understand, no matter who we are. Kalahari desert dweller or Wall Street banker, some things are under our control and some things are not. That's why both can understand the same stories and dwell within the confines of the same eternal truths. Finally, the fundamental reality of chaos and order is true for everything alive, and not only for us. Living things are always to be found in places they can master, surrounded by things and situations that make them vulnerable. Order is not enough. You can't just be stable and secure and unchanging, because there are still vital and important new things to be learned. Nevertheless, chaos can be too much. You can't long tolerate being swamped and overwhelmed beyond your capacity to cope, while you are learning what you still need to know. Thus, you need to place one foot in what you have mastered and understood, and the other in what you are currently exploring and mastering. Then you have positioned yourself where the terror of existence is under control, and you are secure, but where you are also alert and engaged. That is where there is something new to master, and some way that you can be improved. That is where meaning is to be found. All right, I'm going to cut that there. I'm also going to apologize. I know I read that parts of that a bit. Not feeling the best in any case. Hopefully tomorrow's episode is going to be better. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.